So that's our webinar for today, the Opera 3 Reporter webinar. So I know that everybody of you use Opera 3 and therefore it's going to be useful and relevant to you guys. A little bit of an agenda, just at the welcome. Introductions, myself, I'm Bruce Kitt, Sales Marketing Director here at Oasis. I deal with all things sales related, and I also run these monthly sessions to give a bit of information and overview of the areas in Opera and some other modules as we go along during the year. After now, we'll be looking at the module Opera 3, a little bit of information, some reading material about how it works, what it is. We'll be looking at the creating and editing reports after that, and then I'll go in and we'll do a bit of a demo, creating some and editing some reports that already exists within our system. After that, I'll open for a Q&A if anybody's got any questions, and then we'll move on and finish from that point onwards. So firstly, Opera 3 Reporter. So within most modules, there are standard report commands, most of which provide some criteria selection procedures. So although these standard reports can satisfy most of our requirements, you may have other reports you want to produce based on the data contained. Let me just, someone is trying to get in. The meeting, so give me a moment. Let me just make that setting. There you go. Sorry about that. So when you may have some other reports that you want to produce that's based on the data contained within the database. So you can use the reporter module that then to design your own reports. And the reporter folder contains two commands. So as you are aware, you've got your reports manager and you've got your reports. So where you make your reports and where you run your reports. So you use the report manager command to create and manage your designs. The reports command provides a list of all the reports you have designed, and you use this list to select and run the reports you want, which extract the information stored in the company databases. The report designs you create are available for selection from any of the companies that you create in your system. So if you have 5 companies in your system and you create a report in the reporter module, that report is available throughout the different 5 companies, even if you append it to the menu structure, which you'll see later. The reporter module is designed to allow you, the user, to generate your own reports quickly and easily, and to save the report definition so that it can be printed at any time in the future, and can also be used as an export tool to pass data to third-party products. The module has the following characteristics or features. So it's very easy to use. By use of cursor keys, mouse control, reports can be designed by making selections from drop-down lists. We'll see right later, rather than needing any kind of special programming knowledge or reporting experience. New reports can also be created using existing reports as a template. So you can take an existing report and you can copy it and change the information into a new report. You have access to all your data. Where there is a logical link between modules, facilities are provided to accessing more than one module's data on the same report. So it means that if you do, for example, a sales order processing a report from in the reporter, you'll also have access to sales accounts and nominal accounts because there is a link that exists between the modules. Flexibility, sequences and formats can be defined and calculations can be done. Very efficient, reports can be printed off in batches. Designs are shared across companies. Security, users are only provided with access to those database files which are compatible with their own modules. What does that mean? It means that if you don't have access to payroll and you have payroll in your system and you don't have access to it through your own user setup, you won't have access to payroll within the reporter module either. Extendability, the database can be extended to include tables and fields that's used by third-party application. What we mean by that is the development tools that might have been used or development utilities you have in your system will be reportable from within the report module. So the report module is accessible from the Opera 3 navigator, and you can be protected from use by denying access on a user by user basis on the menu item. So if you don't want users access to a reporter, you can deny the access on the user account. When they have restricted access to modules, the reporter module will reflect the restrictions. Reporter will make available only the modules selected in the user profile. If the user has limited access within the modules, user will see all the tables associated with the module. There's no way to restrict individual tables. So that was just a little bit about the module. So moving on to creating and editing these reports. So when you design a report, you must identify the data elements in your company database on which the report content is based. Well, what does that mean? It means that if you want to build a report for payroll, you need to select some sort of a payroll database. If you want to make a report on your customers, you're going to have to select something from the sales ledger. That kind of thing is what they mean there. Before you start to create your first report design, you may wish to take a little time just to learn about the principles of the database. And that's what we're going to have a look at in a minute. And the terminology that we use. The application stores your company information in a database, and the database is broken into module databases that in general correspond to the modules you use. So it just means that in the background of your data, there is the databases, and each database table or file contains certain information about certain areas in your database. So you'll have a table for sales customers, you'll have a table for purchase suppliers, you'll have a table for nominal accounts, and that kind of thing, etc. And within those tables, you'll have database files. So with each of the modular categories, the main files corresponding to the modules are separated. The selection you make determines what is available within the design of the report that is already stored in the database. This is known as the report base, and we'll see that as you build the report, it will be very clear what you go through. You are restricted to the selection of one report base. So it means you can only select a certain payroll base, and not payroll and customers at the same time. But you can add custom fields to calculate or derive from other data. You cannot create one report design that utilizes data from more than one report base. Once you selected the base, you can choose from a list of fields, and each field has a name that identifies the information in it. And they are grouped under headings that represent the tables in the database. We'll see that in a second when we go through. In each of the tables are lists of the individual fields that hold the data that compromises the information used in report design. There are hundreds of fields available. So typically one field represents one column of information on a report, and although you are not obliged to include a selected field in the report output, you may be selecting it for another purpose. So such as for selection or to be used in the calculation of another column or information. So regardless of the report base and the table you select, there is always the following available. Customized fields, you have formula and construct. Formula for numeric output and construct for text output. So whenever you want to add a piece of information in your report design that is derived rather than existing in the database. So for example, you might want to add a column on a report that calculates a commission as a percentage of an existing sales value. The construct are similar to formula, except that they are applied to text fields, while formula apply to numeric fields, what I said before. So the creation of reports designs involves following a few straightforward steps, and some of which are optional. You begin with the report manager form. This contains a number of tabs, dialogues, each covering a stage in the report design. So the stages, and I'm putting it on here. So if you look back at some point, perhaps at the recording, you can look at the 6 steps that you need to take when you build a report. So you open the reports folder, you click on the report manager, on the record menu, you click new to create a new report. On the general tab, then as you go along, you complete the boxes that's provided. The next is the basis tab, and you choose the content of the report by selecting the appropriate module and fields. Save it at that point in time, and then you use the other tabs to refine the report design. And we'll see that in a moment. And then you can store the report design on the record menu. You click save. So when we create a new report, the stages we go through is this. So first things first, we see the report manager like this. When we create the new record item, it presents us with this general screen with everything blanked out. It gives us the opportunity to give a report name. It could be what we want it to be. And we can give our report a title, what it is we're trying to achieve. Is there a hotkey for that? Now, if you put a hotkey in, it means when you look at the list of reports later on, you can use the Alt plus the hotkey to run that report without having to use the mouse. The output of the report, is it a detailed list or is it a summary list in the drop-down box? And then, of course, the orientation, is it landscape or portrait? How do I want to see this report? The show deleted records, well, it is what it is. If I have it ticked on and I run a report, it will show me deleted records in the list. If I don't have it on, it won't show them to me. And the Excel output, if I have Excel output ticked on, when I run the report or preview the report, there'll be a drop down where the standard report design is at the top. And if I select Excel, it will run the report directly to Excel for me as an output. As I go along, I click next on the basis tab at the top, as you can see there. I am then presented with a report base, and in the report base, I will find a whole host of report bases available for me. There is several report bases within each module. So there'll be nominal accounts, there might be nominal budgets, etc. But once I selected the report base here on the left-hand side, I will find the available fields. Now, each of these with a plus sign in front is a different database table. And when I open that plus sign in front of it, I will be presented with the individual table fields that sits within each of those tables. By double clicking on a field, it puts the information on the field selected on this side. And then I can really just build up by double clicking on the fields I want in the order I want potentially, and what I want to see in my report when I run that report. At this point, I have to click the save option, and then I can go to the fields. The fields is now presenting me with all the different fields I selected in the basis of my report. And each individual field has got a set of settings on the right-hand side, depending on the output of the field. So, for example, the first field selected there as a budget manager, I have the ability to overwrite that if I want to and call it anything else I need to. The field width is suggesting how long the field should be. I can again override that and make the field shorter, especially if I'm not going to run it to an Excel. The expression automatically exists because it is being selected based on the field that you selected on this side. The stretch is a yes or no. What does stretch mean? It means that if the field width is 62 and the output of the field is 65, it won't cut the information off. It will go into the next line. So it won't cut it off effectively. The repetition, suppress or don't suppress. Effectively, if I am pulling out a detailed list of information, and let's say the budget manager appears in the first column 20 times, if the suppress option is on, his name will only be in the first line. The rest will assume it's his. We go on to our sequence tab. So the sequence is in which order I want to see my report. And when that sorting key changes, what do I want to happen on that change, and in which direction do I want to see it? So as you can see here, the sorting keys are only available from the fields that has been selected. The budget manager has been selected here. I want to see the information ascending. And when the budget manager change, I want a subtotal printed. After that, I want the order to be in the account order. No action is needed when that takes. And I want to see cost centers separate again as a sorting key. And that's the three ways it's going to sort in this instance. The criteria tab, and first thing you'll notice is there are 5 different areas for criteria. In the budget manager, in the reporting field first, again, you get to select the report field from the fields that you have selected before. That's the only ones that's available. The relational operator that you get in the list includes the following. You get an equal to, you get a not equal to, a greater than equal to, a less than equal to, a less than, contains, not contain, between or not between. So there's a whole host of relational operators that you can use down that list, depending on what it is you want to do. Now, what you can see immediately, what this one does in the example is when the report is run, it asks me from which budget manager to which budget manager I want to run the list. And this is what it gives me when I start to run the report. So it's a bit of a filter before I run, so I can only see a certain range of people, for example. And in the bottom field, the distribution account says equal to system variable empty. It means if it's asking me if the distribution account is empty, so if it's not a distribution account, it should be included in the list of accounts that it will pull out for the budget manager. So the comparative type that you have in there on the side gives as well different bits of information. You've got a runtime variable, so at the point of running the report, what I wanted to do. A system variable is variables that access in the system. So in this case, if the field is empty, for example, I want it, but you can also say if it's not empty, or if it contains one, or that kind of thing can go in there. You can also equal it to different fields or different ranges within the comparative list. The last tab here, we've got an export tab. So the export format, if you use the drop-down box, there's quite a lot in there, from XLS format to DBF formats to PDF, etc., etc. Formats that you can use for outputting the report or exporting the report. If you select one of the formats, the file name appears and you can put that in. It says if it exists. So every time I run the report, if the report already exists, what do I want to do? Do I want to overwrite it? Do I want to append it? Make a copy of it, etc. And then the output is where it's going to output the file. Now, normally it outputs it into the export folder within the data folder of your Opera 3 data, where it contains everything else. And then lastly, here we've got our list at the end, which obviously gives me the list of reports, and my screen is not going to that one at the moment. So that is kind of creating and editing reports from a more kind of wordy point of view. Next, we'll go into the software. I'm gonna go and have a look at the functionality relating to the report manager. So to create a new report design, here we've got our reporting area. Here we've got our reporter module, and we've got our reports manager, a report manager. I'm going to open that up, and what we get first is our general screen. To create a new report, we open this folder, then we click on the new item menu like we do in Opera. It gives us a blank page, and then we need to start filling the information in of what we want to do. The report name, for starters, is a unique name you give to your report that could be whatever you need it to be. It can indicate what you are trying to achieve through the report. For example, let's just build a payroll report to start with, which is a list report of all my current payroll employees. So I'm just going to call my report payroll 1, for example. Current employees list is a report title I give to that. The menu hotkey is if I give it a letter like C, for example, when I run the report, I can use just the letter C as a hotkey that would run the report for me. The report type here, I have a detailed list and I've got a summary list. Well, the detailed list is going to pull out each line of information that I want to have in my report. If I select a summary list there, it will summarize the information and put it together as a summarized field for me. So let's say it pulls out a bunch of transactions for the same customer. It might summarize it for the sales of 1 month, depending on how I've set that up. But that's what the summary list does. I'm going to keep it on a detailed list for now. And then the orientation, well, how do I want to see this? A portrait or a landscape? I'm just going to go on a landscape for now. Then I've got a couple of options here at the bottom. I've got show my deleted records and I've got Excel output. Show deleted records is if I run the report, do I want to see any delete records that has been deleted within my report? And the Excel output is when I run the report and I see the publisher come up, I have the option of selecting the Excel output at the top. I'm going to select that on because it gives us that option to run the report to Excel when we need to. Now, carrying on from our first stage is our next stage, and that goes on to the tab at the top, which is the basis of our report. So firstly, we need to select what base our report is on. Now, I said I wanted to build a report on current employees. I'm going to find my payroll list. I'm just going to press on the P. It can go down the list, or I can find it here, and here I can see I'm starting to get my payroll information. I can look at my payroll W name, which we know is the name payroll employees name list. And immediately by selecting that report base, on the left-hand side, I have all the fields available that I can report in within that report base that I set. You can see I've got here the employee information, I've got cost center information, I've got additional optional information here that relates to pensions and everything. I've also got the profile here, so the employee profile I can report on, which groups they are, what departments they're from, bank details, training, everything that sits here within that payroll base I'm able to report on. So I'm just going to pull out my employee reference, and as you can see, all you do is you double click on the field, it throws it on the field selected side. I want to see surname, I want to see forename in there. I might want to see the employee's tax code. Are they month 1 or not? Shall it pull out their national insurance code and number? Perhaps I don't want the NI code. I can double click on it and move it back this way. And perhaps I will pull out. Yeah, let's start with that. That gives me a full list of my employees I have. I can now carry on next on to my stage 3, where I can look at my fields. The fields is all those I've selected currently in my previous stage 2 in the basis. Here I can take these fields, I can pull them up or down, I can change the order in which they come. If I highlight a field here on the right-hand side, that information represents that field. So it tells me the employee field is the reference number. I might want to change that to say pay ref. 20 characters is long enough for that. I don't want to play with the expression because that is where it takes this information from. The stretch information means if the reference is longer than the 20 characters, will it stretch the field and basically allow the information all to be printed. If I don't stretch it and it goes longer, it just cuts the information off. The repetition column, if I have a list of information or a list of transactions, for example, that pulls the same information out, I can say I want to suppress the repetition. And I'll show you that later when we look at a nominal report. Suppressing the repetition means it won't print the same number, for example, the same nominal code for each transaction. It will just give it one, suppress the rest of them, and put the new one in when the next one starts. And again, I'll show you that when we go. The extraction is if you only want to extract the first 5 or the last 10 or the middle 7 characters of the information, then you can do so by selecting here what you want to pull out. The sequence, well, in which order do I want to see this? Well, let's go with pay reference order, perhaps. On change, so if it's a report, I can tell it, well, firstly, which direction I want it to go in, but on the change is what do I want to do? When that pay reference change, do I want to print a subtotal or do I want each of those to be on a new page? In this, I just want to list at this point in time, so I'm not going to do that for that one there. But I can also do a secondary sort key, so I can say by pay reference and then by surname. So it will give me the reference first and then the surname alphabetically. The criteria tab is where I can run information when I run this report, for example. I could select any of the fields I have. And then I've got some rational operations. So if I only want to look at pay references higher than a certain number, I can say greater than or greater than equal to a constant of, for example, and when I run the report, it will only give me information where the payroll reference is higher than 0001, for example. I'm not going to put one in here, and when we look at another report, it will be more evident how you can use that. At this point, we'll go up to the export tab. What the export tab gives us is how do I want to export this report? If I run the report, what do I want to do with it if I export it? Firstly, the export format. I've got loads of formats here I can export this file into. So you can see you can pull information here that might fit other systems that you might want to import into. The most used is for us is the XLS version 5, or the trusty old CSV up here at the top. What happens then is the file name becomes available, and when you can see is it puts a path there of where it's going to save that information. So this is my laptop name. That's the name of the folder, the share folder it's going to find. It's the data, the Z export, and it's going to create a report. If I export it, that's called payroll 1. It asks me here, if it exists, what do I want to do? So if I've run this report every week, every month, however I do that, when I run it next time, what do I want to do with the report that exists there already? Do I want to overwrite it? Do I want to append it? So just add to it, or do I want to merge it? I'm just going to select overwrite. And at this point, I'm going to output all records. I can save my report now. And probably for the first time, we can preview that. We've built our report. Now's the first time we can go and have a look. In my action button, on any of the screens I am in, doesn't matter. On the action button, I can click on the preview. It brings up my preview box. I've got some options here. Firstly, the export option. If I select export, it's going to run the report based on the export information I've put in there. If I run report, it's going to pop up my publisher that we know in Opera 3, and it's going to give me options. I'm going to use that on this report. Now, remember on the front screen, we selected to have an Excel output. That means in here now, I can select an Excel report. I can give it a name, and I can run that report. And now this report I have built is going to run the information into Excel for me. It should open an Excel file for me and present me with the information I have just built in that report. Now, this is starting with a list of all my employees. I've not broken it down per group. I've not decided who is a current employee, who has left my employment. This is really just a full list I've pulled out based on that information. Now, I've got a report. I've built a new report, and we'll do another one in a moment. But now I've got a report, I want to perhaps edit that report. Well, it's pretty straightforward. Within my list, I find the report I want to edit. I'm going to edit this one I've been looking at. And now I can come back to the basis. I can decide I want to add the leaver status, because I want to know if this person have left our employment or not. And I might want to put in the leave date, should they have left. Okay, I can save that now. I've got that information in there. Let's put my preview on, have a quick report look. This time I'm just going to pop it to the screen just to show you the different options. You can look at the report. It's given me the information I've wanted in the order I wanted it to be. I see that, you know, now you can go back and you can edit the fields. I decide the surname, the forename fields are way too big. I don't want to see that. Also, what I really don't want to see here, I don't want to see anybody who's a leaver, because this is a current employee list. So let's go back and just change those couple of bits here. In my fields, in the surname, the field is a 62 length. I've just seen it's way too big. I can change that to a 50. I'm going to do the forename the same. I'm going to change that to a 50. And also, actually, I want to see the forename before the surname. I can save that. In my criteria, I'm going to go with this leaver status. I'm going to say not equal to, and we saw there was an H in that field, and those fields where the levers are. I'm going to say not equal to H. I don't want to see anything with an H in my criteria. If I run my report now, and again, I'm just going to quickly run it to screen to show you, we now don't have any levers here there with an H in there. So I can further now carry on and decide I also don't want to see those with a D in my list, and keep on carrying on building my report. Once I've had my report built, and I want to make this report available to everybody, because not everybody can perhaps run the reporter module or can come in here. In my action button, I've got an option that says append to menu. If I click that option, it says, are you sure you want to append this report to the payroll miscellaneous reports menu? I can say, yep, I certainly want to do that. And now it's telling me it's been added to my miscellaneous reports menu. And I must relog on to activate it. So let me just do that. Log on again. And when I log in now, I'm going to go over to my payroll report, payroll processing area. In my miscellaneous reports, now here at the bottom, I have my current employees list. I can now run this from there. I can run that as an export. As you can see, it's run that for me. This is where it exports to. That's the, if you remember, that's the path we set. and that report now sits here as a CSV. I can run it. This time the report is in a different Excel format when it exports than to when you run it to Excel. So as you can see here, it's just given me the information that is contained within my report, run to that area. When I run it again, it will overwrite that report. So going back to my reporter, I want to cover something within the nominal ledger, for example. So what I did was already created a current year trial balance, for example, or a profit and loss for the current year. So I'm not going to build a new one, but I'm going to talk you through how you would do should you have built this, just so that we understand all the areas again. So I'm going back to my general area, and this time I'm looking at an accounts report, so something from my nominal ledger. I'm going to look at my profit and loss, for example. So I've got my report type set as a detailed list because I don't want to summarize the information. I want to see all the transactions, all the information, all the accounts that makes up what I want to see in this report. I've set it as a landscape report because I think it might go a little bit wide, but I've also set it as an Excel output because I have suspicion that the amount of fields I want to select in this report might go beyond an A4 piece of paper. I've selected my report basis as the nominal ledger and the accounts within the nominal, because what I want to pull out is a profit and loss. And we know profit and loss in Opera and Pegasus is built around my type and my subtype. So I've pulled out from the accounts, the types and the subtypes. I've pulled out the type description, the subtype description, the account code, the cost center. I pulled a description for that out, and then I pulled out a debit year to date and a credit year to date. Now I had to do that because in Opera, in Pegasus, the way the information is stored against these accounts, it stores it as a debit or a credit, so it doesn't store it as a balance, one field you can pull out. But what I can then do is use here at the bottom one of my formula or constructs, and I've selected the formula field there to pull out the balance. Now that was a formula I put in the bottom. You'll see that's why I put 2 in. I'll stick that one in there just to show you how we've gotten to what I did. So I've selected the fields I wanted from here, you know, through opening up here and finding the information I want to pull out. Coming over to our fields, I then pulled these into the order I want. I changed the description fields to something more reasonable from 62 to 35. I did that for all of them. You'll also note that I pressed suppress on the type description, on the subtype description. I don't want to see that information repeat itself 100 times. That's why I've done that on this information. The debit and the credit year to date, I selected a repetition of print. That's fine. But I want to show you in this instance, when there's a value column you've selected, you have the ability to count, to sum, to average, to minimum or maximum. So you can pull out the count, so the number of records, you can sum them together, you can average the records, you can pull out the minimum record in the level or the maximum record, the maximum value in the string. I just want to add them all together. I've done that for both of theirs. Now, this is where I just want to show you, and this is a really good trick. When you've selected the formula field, you know what you want to do. When I selected the formula field, I wanted to take the debit and the credit, pull them together and give me a balance effectively. So in Opera, I take the year-to-date debit, the year-to-date credit, and I take it off the year-to-date debit. But that sounds really complicated. So if I take my expression, when I selected a formula, I take my expression, I can say question mark minus question mark. I know the balance is 2 fields I need to deduct from each other. If I select enter on that, the first thing that pops up, it says to me, select the expression field 1 of 2. So what is the first expression I want to deduct here? That was our year-to-date It was our credit year-to-date. Select the first one. Now it's telling me select the expression 2 of the field. That would be my debit year-to-date. What it then does, my expression, it takes those two, that's the first one, minus the second one, and it's put it in there now for me. I'm going to call this balance 2. And the total column, yeah, let's sum this together too. I'm going to save that. In my sequence, I've put it as type because I want to see the type as my sequence that I want to see this in. When the type changes, I want to print a subtotal. So every time the type changes from sales to cost of sales, for example, I want to see a subtotal printed for that. And then in my criteria, I've had to do something interesting because the type contains all the information, all the types, the balance sheet types, the profit and loss types, everything is contained within the types. So knowing the nominal structure that you have, you might want to say, like I did here, I said, I want to pull out my type greater than equal to. So basically from and to. I want to pull out my type 30, which I know is sales, to 45, which is overheads. But I also don't want to see the balance. You know, the balance is going to calculate. I don't want that to be 0 because if I print every single transaction that's got a 0 value in that report might be huge. And I've saved that. So I think if we preview this report, and perhaps I'll do it as let's do it as a report to my Excel. This is my PL1 report. Publish it. And there it started to doing interesting things that I wanted to do. So firstly, I want to mention my type 30 is my sales. That's what the description is next to it. My type 35 is my cost of sales. 45 is my expenses and overheads. So as you can see, I cut that one off. I set the size and now it's cut the information off, even if I pull it bigger. But the fact that 30 didn't print over there, sales didn't print over there, that was the suppress option that we selected. The same there and the same there. Because we suppress the information, it doesn't keep on printing me the same thing over and over. Also, when I selected the sequence, I said I wanted it by type. And when the type changes, I want a subtotal, and that's what it's done here for me. It's given me a subtotal when it changes from 30 to 35, which is my cost of sales. Again, a subtotal when it changes to 45, and all the information contained in there. Now, as just playing with this information, there is the balances of the two fields, which is exactly the same, which I've built a second ago, just to show you that it pulls the right information out. And then, of course, you can build on this report. You can build anything from here. You can copy the report. If you like the base of the report, you can use the copy functionality here at the bottom of Opera. You can copy a report. You can call it a next name. And what it does is it brings that report to from me with everything I have currently set. And now I can start saying, okay, perhaps I shall change that to run a balance sheet report or a profit and loss just for my sales types, for example. But then I have the ability to edit the report. I don't have to rebuild and select all the fields, and I can do that. One of the reports I asked my team in the office that many people use, and I know there's a lot of payroll users on here today, was a new starters report. I mean, that's very straightforward here because you select your new starters and select your selections there. On the basis you select the W name report, you pull out the normal information, the reference, the name, the surname, the NI code, whatever you want to, but you can then pull out the start date and the leave date. And in the fields, you can do some selections on those. I want to sequence this by start date because I might want to put out new starters from a different period in time. And the criteria is exactly what I've said here. I said I want to pull out a start date that's greater than or equal to a runtime variable this time. A runtime variable means that when I run the report, I select what that variable is, what the start date is. I select what that is when I start the report. So I've saved that. Let's preview that report. And when I select on report, this is where this criteria can come in, because I said a runtime variable. So at the point of running this report, what new starters do I want to see? I might want to see everything that everyone who started, where are we today? The first of this year, for example. Say okay to that. My report would build. I can stick it to Excel or whatever I want to do. I'm just going to put it to my screen this time. And it's going to pull out for me the two new starters I had in that period. I also, unfortunately, they also left in the same period, but they were new starters then. I could, of course, filter my report to exclude anybody that has already left my employment. In this instance, I wouldn't have had anybody on my report then. But I can run that. For a much longer period in time because my data exists within my system. So this is everybody that started employment with me from the start date of the 1st of the 1st, 2010. Obviously, leave dates, a bunch of them are still working for me. So there we go, just to mention that. I think that takes care of running these reports, building these reports. I think within the criteria area, perhaps there are a from and tos you can run by having this information where it will pop up when you run the report and it says date from and to. For example, I can do an and statement there. I can select my start date as well, and this time I'm going to say less than equal to runtime variable start date 2. I'm going to save that, and now when I run my report I get two fields, which start date from, I want to which start date to, and it will then give me the information based on that criteria I set, and it will show on my report here at the top what I've done. So as you guys can see, it's very flexible. You can get a lot of information out of the reporter, and with the ability to append it to the menu, which means that within here, you can now come and you will be able to run reports like this one I built, for example. In there, I can come in here, I can build my sales budgets report. This is a massive report in the sense that I pulled 12 periods out along. I can't even think about the fact that this is going to run on a paper, so I have to run this to an Excel sheet. And I just want to show you again as a report. This one is based on the sales transactions on the sales table. and nominal tables to pull out any budgets I have on my sales accounts. This is all just sales. So this might be a budget sheet I want to give to my sales team to say this is the budgets we have. Of course, I can pull the sales into this too so that they can see what the actual sales to the budget were on this. It's a very powerful reporting. So there you go. That was demoing, creating, editing reports. Now, questions? Any questions I can answer regarding this? Some advice I can give is use the help file. If you use the F1 key on the reports manager, you'll get quite a lot of information. Everything I've covered is in there, as well as the different drop-down areas you find within the report manager with a good explanation of what of each of those are. So I really urge you guys to try and build some reports, and give me a shout if you get stuck on anything, or a reminder. So any other questions? Any questions about this for me? No, I'm going to take that as no. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening today. So to create a new report design, and here we've got. I'm just going to keep on playing the same thing for you. It seems like. Thank you for listening. If there's no other questions, I want to say thank you and tell you that we have these webinars on a monthly basis. On the last Thursday of every month. The month of March is dedicated to the construction industry software, and more specifically subcontractors processing within that area. And in very much the same kind of format. We'll be looking at it live. It's not myself doing it, but as product specialist that I got that will present the information to us. So thank you very much, everybody, and I hope to see you soon on another of our events.